I have a friend, her name is Noreen, and Noreen loves mysteries of all kinds, the classic Agatha Christie. She loves, you know, Perry Mason, Murder, She Wrote, and even as she's home in the daytime, that's the whatever that channel is that's showing the Perry Mason over and over again in the morning, that is what is running. And she has promised that the next time I visit her in Florida, we are going on a murder mystery train ride. Now, I don't know, maybe I see you not, so some of you must be familiar with what that is all about. So it's like a dinner on a, you know, a train ride around the city, so you see the sights as you go by. And they serve dinner, and while you're enjoying dinner, different actors come in and they play their part, they say their lines. And your job as a passenger on this train is to try to figure out who done it. Some murder has been committed on the train, and your job is to figure out who done it. Now, it's basically the same play on every train ride, but the actors ahead of time decide actually who is going to be the murderer this trip. So your job as a passenger is to try to figure it out, to be surrounded by the action and the words, and to sort of sort through it, and then hopefully to figure out who the real murderer is. There is also a spiritual practice of stepping into the scripture, of being surrounded by the action that's taking place in a Bible reading. So as you're reading a particular passage, you are not the outsider. You actually become a part of the action. You imagine what it is to be one of the players in the scene, what the smells might be, what the sounds would be in that particular place, what the whole situation is. You would even imagine things that the gospel writer or the epistle, whatever passage you read from the Bible, you'd imagine things that they have not even described, just because you are standing in it and looking as an insider at the action. In today's gospel story, I think it's important for us to step in and be an insider. Because sometimes, unless you are in the midst of the action, unless you really take part in the story, you might miss some detail that is really important. Some other drama might distract you, something important, but maybe that is not the real point of the story. We have a spectacular, dramatic story told by Luke, only Luke. It's a story of the raising of this dead son, this man who is being carried out, his coffin is being carried out to the burial place outside the city gates. And there is a crowd of people following along, and his mother is also there. Resurrection is huge. It's not an everyday occurrence. And so the idea of Jesus raising someone from the dead is big. It's big news. We are a people who believe in the promise and live in the promise that Jesus has the power to raise the dead. And we trust that we too will be resurrected. And we are called to be a people, a resurrection people. But if we step into the story and look with the eyes of Jesus, we are actually not looking at the coffin. That is not what first attracts Jesus. Possibly the crowd following the coffin calls his attention to what's happening, but Jesus' focus is on the woman. It is on the weeping mother. It is on the widow. He looks at her. He saw her, that's what Luke says. He saw her and had compassion. She is his focus. Because Jesus knew what it was to be a widow in his time. He knew she was grieving the loss of a son. That he understood. But he also understood one other thing. And Luke points it out when he says that this is her only son. She is also grieving the loss of her livelihood, because she will hardly likely have another way to make a living. It is likely her son was her only support in that time. Women did not have the means to make a living. It was very unusual, very unusual. She would have to depend on the kindness of strangers each and every day of her life, hoping that her neighbors would remember, after all the funeral things have been taken care of, that her neighbors would remember her and would remember God's command to take care of the widow, the orphan, and the stranger. Day by day, she would be looking for a handout without her only son. Jesus understood that, and he had compassion. And then he acted on that compassion. He stepped forward and he laid his hand on the coffin. Now, that too is significant, because in acting, Jesus was getting messy. To lay your hand on the dead was to become unclean. He would have to go through purification rites to restore himself to a standard which will enable him to worship again in the temple and to participate in religious practices. He was willing to disrupt what was going on, to become unclean, to make a difference in this woman's life, to meet a need. He did not participate in the expected way, the way that all of us, with sympathy and really we are called to do, to support others in time of need. But he did the unusual. He got messy in it. And in raising the son's life, raising the son to life, he also raised the mother's life. He restored her life. It is, in fact, a resurrection story, a double resurrection story. And I think we can learn from it that in our daily life, we need to look like Jesus looked. In the busyness around us, in the activity that is normal in our life, even in grief, in great joy, to look and to spot where there is a need. And then to understand that need, to learn what the situation is, and then not to do the usual, not always to fall in with the expected, to sometimes disrupt what is going on, and then to get messy. You see, on that mystery train, we are surrounded by activity, but we are not the actors. Jesus calls us to be actors, to step out, to reach out, to touch, even if it means to be unclean. Even if it means to get messy, to put our hands on things, and to restore life, to make people whole, to make situations better as best as we can. This is the call call of the followers of Jesus. We are resurrection people because we work to restore those who are lost, those who are without hope, those who are grieving, those who are underserved, those who are overlooked. We need to see them, we need to have compassion, we need to disrupt the ordinary, and we need to reach out and get messy. Amen.
Amen.